Coach Jesse here, and I'm calling you back to the fundamentals. The basics are so overlooked because the whole world's talking about the newest trend and cage-free this and, you know, low salt this and all this stuff, but we have to get back to the basics of how nutrition actually works so that you can see the changes that you'd like to see. Now at Ascend, I have two general categories depending on your goal. If you're a blue, your goal is to reduce weight, reduce unwanted fat, reduce body weight. You want to get to an ideal weight, maybe build some muscle or strength in that process. A green is someone who's maybe building up. They are comfortable with your body weight, but maybe want to build additional muscle, or perhaps underweight and just need to get to a healthy level. So that's the difference between green and blue. That's going to come into play as we go through some of these concepts. Some of the information will be directed to one or the other. So myth number one, oftentimes you'll say, oh, that I ate really bad, or hey, Coach Jesse, is this good? Is this a good food? And it's like, well, it depends. For example, what's good for a green might not be good for a blue, and vice versa. So it just takes knowing the context. We cannot use absolute terms. Even within one person, a food one day might be supportive, another day it might be unsupportive. And that's the terminology that I like. Is it supportive or is it unsupportive? It takes the moral aspect out of it and you're just thinking functionally. Myth number two is water weight. You can lose water weight and that doesn't make you healthier. Your body is primarily made out of water, and losing water weight doesn't mean you're losing fat. It's not a goal in and of itself. We actually want to be drinking a lot of water. One of the ways that fat is burned and exhausted is through your waste and also through your breath, which is interesting. So we have to be drinking water because we are a biochemical machine, and water is an absolute necessity so that everything can function well. And myth number three, this is kind of a bigger category, just getting your terms right and your concepts and your awareness correct. So we're going to dig into that a little bit. A calorie, you're going to hear me saying calorie, it's just a unit of measure for the energy in food. Now, not all of the nutrients in food has a calorie, like vitamin A, for example, doesn't have any calories to it. So a calorie is just speaking to the types of nutrients that can be burned as like movement or fuel. So when you look on the back of a nutrition label, that's the biggest one for a reason. That's one of the main things to look at. And an example of calories, if you go run a mile, that might require 100 calories to produce all the movement, the breathing, the muscular contraction. Or for example, you might have a resting metabolic rate of 1,500 calories, meaning just to keep your body systems alive, your body burns 1,500 units of energy. Hunger. This is going to be a big one that we get into. I love this topic. This changed everything for me getting into it. And sometimes the word hunger and appetite are used interchangeably. I tend to find a more of a physical connotation of hunger and a more psychological connotation of appetite. However, I might say, hey, do you wake up in the morning with an appetite? But generally speaking, what the differences are, just in like how I think about this information, is hunger, we're talking about like the stomach and the intestines and like it's empty. And there's symptoms to that. Headache, you're feeling sluggish. You have a organ in your body that's now empty and it's churning and rumbling. And hunger is generalized, like you feel something in your mind, but you also feel it in your stomach. An appetite, I like this word to kind of refer to like if you have a specific food in mind, or you can still have an appetite unrelated to hunger cues. For example, I can be full, but still have an appetite for candy, right? And that's often linked to a mental or emotional desire. We're going to get into the differences, but hormones and mechanoreceptors, we're going to talk about that in our hunger series. if you see the term energy dense or energy sparse, it's just referring to, is there a lot of calories or a little bit? Nutrient dense. So these two things, there can be overlap, but sometimes there's not. I'll give examples in a future segment. Something that's nutrient dense has a lot of nutritional value, whereas, you know, like lettuce is the least nutrient and energy dense. It's just a bunch of water and cellulose. There's like not even any calories really in it. You're going to see the terms anabolic and catabolic. Ana means to build up. Catabolic means to build down. So typically we want to be anabolic with body structures like muscle and catabolic with fat. However, depending on how we eat, we can be catabolic with muscle, and we want to avoid that. That's protein sparing. We'll talk about that in the future. Calorie balance is referring to, in a day, how many calories am I eating and how many calories am I burning? And remember, I'm not just burning calories in a workout. It's just even when you're sleeping, when you're awake, your body is burning a lot of calories just doing its own thing. Like that's why you have a physical temperature, because there's a burning, there's a heat production going on. That's just one example. We're going to keep getting deeper and drawing out the implications so that you can begin building that proper lifestyle and making those adjustments. I'll see you in the next module. While we're on this subject, remember that any calories consumed that are not needed are going to be stored as either body fat or possibly glycogen. You know, it's the storage form of glucose. We are going to do a deep dive into the macronutrients. There's 5: protein, fats, and carbs. Water and fiber are also macronutrients. Macro meaning large, you need them in large amounts. Whereas the micronutrients, you're getting micronutrients in amounts of milligrams and micrograms. And it's primarily going to be minerals, vitamins, and phytonutrients. Servings and portions. Servings is typically what you're going to see in a nutrition label. When we talk about portions, which I may call servings, we're talking about what you're actually eating. So a portion could be half a serving, a portion could be 2 servings. So portion is just like when we're talking about a food category like vegetable or protein, we're saying, hey, a meal might be 1 portion of protein, 1 portion of vegetable, and 1 portion of carbs.